Hey guys, John V here from PhoneArena. Right now you're watching our in-depth video comparison between the LG Optimus G and the HTC One X. Both are respectable Android-powered smartphones. We know that the HTC One X has been out for quite some time, but nevertheless, it's still a relevant device out there in the market. In contrast, the LG Optimus G is going to be coming out shortly as a newer hardware, of course, quad-core processor combined with 4G LTE connectivity, so a lot to like about it. But we're going to find out how these two devices stack up against one another. We surely appreciate the distinct design elements that these two handsets have to offer, and in our eyes, they're both very attractive looking devices. We don't find one to be any better than the other, so it ultimately comes down to this personal preference. With the LG Optimus G, it comes off to be a little bit more of the premium device thanks to its choice of materials. It utilizes glass front and back with the crystal reflection pattern, which gives it some attractive elements too. It is wider and is very glossy, so you do notice more of the smudges here going on, but it has a really sturdy feel in the hand. In comparison with the HTC One X, it's more rounded, so comfortable, to hold with one hand, and maintains for a more clean-looking appearance thanks to its unibody polycarbonate shell here. It's still very sturdy, so again, it just ultimately comes down to personal preference. Likewise, we could say the same thing about their displays just because they have so many attractive elements about them. Both are 4.7 inches in size, but it's a Super LCD 2 panel in the HTC One X versus the HD IPS Plus panel in the Optimus G. But the Optimus G sports the slightly higher resolution, but honestly it doesn't make for any superior visuals just because even in the web browser, zoomed out view, we're able to make out most fine details with little issues on both devices. The biggest difference here is just the color reproduction, and that's what ultimately is going to be the deciding factor here, whether you prefer the more warmer tones exhibited by the HTC One X Super LCD 2 panel or the more natural stance of the IPS Plus display of the Optimus G. They're both complemented by their wide viewing angles, but in outdoor conditions we tend to notice just a little bit more visibility with the Optimus G. Not surprisingly, these two handsets feature capacitive Android buttons. The same set here, they're both spaced far away from another to reduce accidental presses. Meanwhile, we find the same set of items above their displays. For example, we have their earpieces, their LED notification lights, and also 1.3 megapixel front-facing cameras, which have the ability to shoot 720p videos. Between the two, we prefer the physical buttons on the LG Optimus G just because they're more pronounced, whereas on the HTC One X, they tend to be a little bit more flush to the surface. And on top of that, the Optimus G's buttons have a more responsive feel. Some of the other familiar common items that we find around their trims include the 3.5mm headset jacks, their noise cancellation microphones. You have micro USB ports for charging data connectivity. You could also gain video out functionality with the aid of an MHL adapter. And finally, in the rear, we find the respective cameras. It's a 13 megapixel one on the LG Optimus G versus an 8 megapixel one on the HTC One X. Both feature LED flashes and the ability to shoot 1080p high-definition videos. And there's no access to their batteries, as we know. As far as storage is concerned, with the AT&T version of the HTC One X, it only features 16 gigabytes for the base version, whereas with the Sprint LG Optimus G, it packs only 32 gigabytes of storage. In the past, LG's custom Android experience never really fared well against the Sense UI just because it didn't have that comprehensive feel, but now with the Optimus G, LG has made some considerable improvements to make it the more preferable experience between the two. Specifically, we like the additional features it has to offer. For example, you have the Q-Slide functionality where we could actually be watching a video while also be doing other things with the phone. It just goes to show the processing power of the handset. Same thing also that we find with the dual screen, dual play functionality of the Optimus G. Again, it's not something we could do or find with the HTC One X. It's just those small things, those additional items that really make the Optimus G the more compelling experience between the two. So it's a quad-core 1.5 GHz Qualcomm Snapdragon S4 Pro processor with 2 GB of RAM in the Optimus G versus the dual-core 1.5 GHz Qualcomm Snapdragon S4 processor with only 1 GB RAM for the AT&T version of the HTC One X. Now, from the onset, it's a little bit difficult to say which one of these is faster just because they execute pretty much all basic tasks in pretty much the same manner, relative ease and very little slowdown. But the more we look at it, for example, as we put on a live wallpaper, we definitely notice the more snappy feel going to the LG Optimus G. It just has a more fluid look with its movement here and tighter feel all around. Seeing that we're given plenty of real estate with these two handsets, they're both fantastic when it comes to composing messages with the respective on-screen keyboards, just because they have a spacious layout and top that very responsive to the touch. So after just some practice between two, we're finding ourselves able to move at a good rapid rate with little issues. Making the web browsing experience more satisfying for the two handsets is the fact that they both offer 4G LTE connectivity, so you get fast data speeds. But when we look past that and just look at the performance, we notice that the Optimus G just has the more fluid movements with kinetic scrolling and even pinch zooming. There's just one distracting element that we find on the HTC One X, and it's just the constant blinking when it re-renders stuff on the fly. It might not be too bad, but it just stands out a lot. But aside from that, they're both great devices for surfing the web. Flaunting very conventional looking music players, we don't find one to be any more advantageous versus the other. Luckily though, at least their functionalities are the same. As far as the audio quality from the respective speakers, they both output some very strong volume tones, so neither one comes out to be better than the other. But it's worth noting that the HTC One X offers Beats audio support. Additionally, we don't have a favorite when it comes to watching high-definition videos, just because, as you could tell here, they're able to play a video that's encoded in MPEG-4 1920 by 1080 resolution with no issues at all. Smooth playbacks, large displays, very bright and strong. It just depends whether or not you prefer the more warmer tones exhibited by the HTC One X's display versus the more neutral colors of the LG Optimus G. So even though the Optimus G is sporting the higher 13 megapixel camera versus the 8 megapixel one on the HTC One X, it doesn't prove to be any better. And in fact, we find their qualities to be very similar, especially in outdoor conditions where they capture the same amount of detail and colors. The only difference here is just in low lighting conditions. We just notice that the Optimus G just handles exposure a little bit better, where it's more balanced with its tone, so it doesn't really overexpose in too many areas. But beyond that, they're pretty much identical. In addition, we find their 1080p high-definition video recording quality to be on the same level to one another, and neither one really stands out as being superior. In fact, they produce the same visuals, which include some softer-looking details and some noticeable artifacting as we're panning very quickly. Both handsets are actually far from perfect when it comes to call quality, just because with HTC One X, its earpiece is rather weak in tone, so it makes it very difficult to hear our callers in noisy environments. Oppositely, with the Optimus G, it kind of has some issues in terms of distortion, which is evident on both ends of the line. In testing out the battery life of both handsets, we used the Sprint eVideo network on the LG Optimus G, while the AT&T HTC One X, we mainly relied on HSPA Plus connections. And so we've managed to get at least one solid day of normal usage at a full charge, whereas with heavier usage, it permits us roughly around the 12-hour mark with both devices. By now, the HTC One X had its time in the spotlight, so the LG Optimus G proves itself to be the more favorable device, especially when you think about outright costs, just because you're getting that quad-core processor combined with 4G LTE connectivity, still something that's a rarity in this day and age. On top of that, the reason why we'd probably go with LG Optimus G's at this point is the fact that its custom Android experience has been really retooled to really make it a more compelling offering than what the HTC Sense UI has to offer on the HTC One X. So if you're looking at both devices, you definitely want to take a look at the Optimus G at this point. So if you'd like to learn more about both handsets, guys, you could check out our website, PhoneArena.com. This is John V. Thanks for watching.